Tonight on PrimeTime, Portugal has delivered a decisive verdict in its presidential race, with voters handing a clear mandate to the centre-left. The result now reshapes Lisbon's political mood as the country prepares for a largely ceremonial yet constitutionally influential presidency. A landslide win, but what comes next? Good evening. Well, more than 11 million people were eligible to vote, and the outcome leaves little doubt. Socialist candidate Antonio José Seguro has won Portugal's presidential election, defeating far-right challenger André Ventura in the second round. Now, Seguro is set to replace outgoing President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa in early March. Let's take a look at this report.
Antonio José Seguro of the centre-left Socialist Party won the second round of the presidential election in Portugal on Sunday. With 99% of ballots counted, Seguro had won 66.7% of votes to secure a 5-year term. The 63-year-old cast himself as the candidate of a modern and moderate left who can actively mediate to avert political crises and defend democratic values.
As I have said many times, as a Democrat, all those who ran against me in this election process deserve my respect. As future President of the Republic, I would add that as of tonight, we are no longer opponents and now have a shared duty to work towards a more developed and fairer Portugal.
Seguro saw off a challenge from the far-right populist Chega Party's André Ventura, who won 33.3% of the vote. Despite his loss, André Ventura said on Sunday that his anti-establishment movement is on its way to victory.
With a great part of our country, Europe and the world against us, with Brussels against us, with everyone against us, we got the best result ever. We did not win, but we are on our way to victory.
Este movimento, este partido, esta força.
In Portugal, the new president will succeed outgoing Conservative Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa in early March. Portugal's presidency is a largely ceremonial role, but holds some key powers, including the ability to dissolve parliament and block legislation under certain circumstances.
Okay, joining us from Lisbon now is Gonçalo Teles, a political commentator and communications consultant. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Gonçalo. What does this tell us, do you think? It's a pretty decisive victory, isn't it? What do you think it tells us about where Portuguese voters are right now?
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for having me, first of all. It tells us lots of things. First of all, that contrary to what the far right had wanted, especially André Ventura, the country is much more moderate than most people would think. I mean, when you look at this second round, and there was a center-left candidate and a far-right candidate, you might have expected that lots of people from the Democratic right would lean towards the far-right candidate. That did not happen. And that did not happen despite the Prime Minister of Portugal maintaining a neutral position, which was very much criticized even by the Democratic right. And also other leaders of the Democratic right also maintained that position, which was hard to understand when you had in contest a center-left socialist, which is one of the most moderate candidates that you could have had from that party. And yet the results tells us that mostly Portuguese people do not want a divisive country, do not like the racist speech, the putting Portuguese in a complete battle with immigrants. And so I think that that's the good side of this election. But obviously, we have to take into account that still the far right continue pretty strong. And that's obvious, even with the far right leader being in the second round of the presidential election.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of that, didn't we? Symbolism, clearly a potent, clearly important element of this election. Seguro presented himself, didn't he, as a stabilising, moderate figure. How central do you think that was to the success?
It was very central, definitely, because Seguro understands that the extreme left, or not so much the radical left, are marginal nowadays in Portugal. They're worth 5 to 7%. And he knew that he had to be in the center of what is actually the Socialist Party, which is a social democratic party, contrary to what it says from its name, but which is quite social democratic and has always been, and with a liberal side also. And so it was very important for him to maintain that moderate position, because it helped him gain ground with the center right, definitely. So it was an intelligent campaign where he had a very fragmented right, because there were lots of candidates on the Democratic right. And then there was this extreme right candidate where you knew he probably would have picked up the electorate from the last legislative elections. And he did that with the 23% in the first round. And the others kind of fragmented between electorates. And he took all of the left and still some of the center-right in the first round.
It's a very interesting point you make there about the fragmentation on the right, Gonzalez. The far-right parties, though, have broken through in recent elections, but we seem to be seeing now a shift decisively the other way. Is this part of an ongoing trend, do you think? Is it political exceptionalism, or are voters responding to earlier pressures that they're now actually confronting, do you think?
With all honesty, I think it's too early to say, but I would think that most voters are understanding that they're not a solution for anything. I mean, that this divisive country in small and medium-sized countries don't take us anywhere. Economically, surely they don't. Even in terms of immigration, they don't. I mean, the whole immigration speech of this far-right party in Portugal, Chega, is completely out of tune with what is the factual reality. And what you need in Portugal, in my perspective, in the near future, is that center-right parties like PSD and like Iniciativa Liberal understand from this election that mainly their electorate are much more moderate than they think, that they haven't leaned towards the right as much as they would believe it has. And that's very important. That's the biggest takeout that I think they can take from this election is, look, you can't do like the prime minister, which is put a neutral side, because on one side we have a moderate socialist, which he kind of called radical, which is completely non-understandable. And on the other side, we have an extreme right candidate. You can't do that, because historically, the center right in Portugal was always much closer naturally to the center left than it ever was to parties like Chega, or to even the speech that comes from Chega, which is in no doubt one of the most extreme radical right parties in Europe. And I think that Portuguese are also starting to understand that. When you look at all the policies that are being followed from Chega and the outcomes, you understand that, no, we have actually a radical right party which is very racist, which is not interesting for the country. And when their main leader, which is Donald Trump on the American side, isn't in the best light nowadays and is coming out through what most people expected that would come out, then you have kind of a backslash on these parties. That's what I think that is starting to happen.
The presidency itself, it's an interesting role, isn't it? Because it's often described as purely ceremonial, but it does carry a certain degree of constitutional weight to it. What could Seguro realistically look to influence? And Do you think he's likely to wield his power in a way that the public will start to see differences?
Definitely, I think that the public wants a president that is constantly present, that intervenes in what the government fails, and that uses this whole influence that is normal in Portugal. And I think that President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa showed this in many aspects, that the role was not confined to any strict norms, that it could be enlarged, sometimes in the worst sense. I think that Marcelo, in that sense, in many aspects, intervened in a bad sense. But I think that Seguro understands that he can be cooperating with this government and with any future government in order to make them more accountable for their policies. And I think that's very important. And then there's also the constitutional position that a president in Portugal has in this semi-presidential regime, which is in parliament. He can obviously dissolve the parliament in a worst case scenario. That happened with President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. I think most of the country hopes we don't go there again. But again, I would concentrate on the influence, and he meets with the prime minister every Thursday. And what we can expect from Seguro is someone that is hardworking. He has a reputation of being very hardworking, of knowing the policies well, of studying the policies. And I think that where the government fails, he'll want to make them accountable, but in the best sense, in a sense of cooperation. And we're already seeing what he says that he's going to do with this whole scenario of the storms in Portugal, which have been quite terrible for the country.
Finally, I just wanted to get your view on this rise of the far right. I mean, to some degree, this result does sort of cool temperatures somewhat, but we still saw, I heard the rhetoric of this sort of, they're all against us, the EU's against us, institutions are against us. And that's a kind of type of rhetoric that does carry a certain degree of potency. It will always attract a number of voters to it. What is going to happen now, do you think? What work needs to be done on the centre left, to try and make sure that they can neutralise those sorts of messages?
Definitely, I think that the better the governments respond to people and to the people's problems, that's the best anecdote that you can have against the far right, definitely. And we have lots of issues in Portugal. I mean, concerning housing, concerning the prices are much higher in all goods. The life is much more expensive than it used to be. There are lots of people that are discontent. This isn't a reality only in Portugal. Obviously, this is reality in most of Europe. And what I think that has to happen is that we need to respond to those people in a much more effective way, so that they don't lean on these far right parties. There's a core side to the far right parties, which I think that will never leave in the coming years, which is a sort of nostalgia of what used to be, not so much a democratic sense, on the contrary. And this kind of goes to the roots of the early 21st or the 20th century in Europe, if you want. And that never really disappeared. And it kind of passed through generation. And then I think that there's one thing that the far right has that we have to understand, is they have lots of financial means, especially due to the American administration, to everything that Elon Musk does towards of funding these parties. And so I think that the fight in that sense has to be open-eyed by the moderate parties. They have to understand everything that's in stake. They have to combat fake news, defend more traditional press and liberal press. That doesn't mean that they need a liberal press that is not completely neutral also in all evaluations and in all that it does. But there's definitely a need to combat fake news on the digital side. And that's something that's interesting that we're looking on between Spain. I mean, Spain is obviously taking the lead in that sense, and that's important.
Mr. Tellez, we appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at how Turkey is quietly expanding its scientific footprint in Antarctica through international research cooperation. Do stay with us.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. Woo! That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Eti Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here that's been cooking. That is amazing.
Welcome back. You're watching PrimeTime. Turkey is quietly expanding its scientific footprint in Antarctica. As part of its 10th national expedition, Turkish researchers have been visiting international research stations, signalling Ankara's growing role in global scientific cooperation on the world's coldest continent.
On the frozen edge of Antarctica, Turkish researchers are moving from one foreign laboratory to another, not as visitors, but as collaborators. As part of Turkey's 10th National Antarctic Scientific Expedition, the team is stepping inside research stations run by Chile, Russia, South Korea, China, and Bulgaria, comparing data, sharing infrastructure, and exploring joint projects in one of the world's harshest environments. Here, cooperation matters as much as discovery. Scientific diplomacy unfolds quietly through shared experiments, joint fieldwork, and trust built far from capitals. One moment captured that spirit. At Chile's Professor Julio Escudero Bas on King George Island, the Turkish flag was raised during a year marking 100 years of diplomatic relations between Turkey and Chile, linking polar science with a century of bilateral ties. For Turkish researchers, Antarctica is more than ice and data points. It is a place where long-distance diplomacy happens quietly through shared experiments, joint fieldwork, and trust built far from capitals. Say Turkey plans to continue expanding its scientific presence on the continent in the years ahead.
Joining us now from Ankara is Bekir İlhan from the Turkey Research Foundation. Mr. İlhan, thank you very much indeed for joining us on PrimeTime. Turkey has been active in Antarctica for over a decade, hasn't it? What stands out, though, about this 10th expedition compared with earlier missions?
Yeah, first of all, we need to say that this is the 10th expedition, and compared to earlier missions, I would say this time the Turkish research group is much more, focused, much more organized, and much more structured, I would say. And it will focus on scientific research, international partnership, and many other areas, I would say. And for now, I would say, Turkey is not a new country to the region, I would say. Of course, Antarctica, is not one of the, regions that's located in the Turkey's immediate influence area. But I would say for research, for scientific research and for international cooperation, Turkish presence in Antarctica is also a part of a vital part of Turkey's, global strategy. And of course, it reflects a long-term Turkish commitment to the region in terms of developing international partnerships, cooperation, and scientific research, I would say.
Yeah, as you say, there's clearly a geopolitical dimension to this, isn't there? Beyond the science, what political message do you think this sends by deepening Turkey's presence in Antarctica, particularly as global competition over polar influence quietly grows?
Yeah, looking at the global geopolitical calculations, I would say Antarctica is one of the important regions, both strategically and economically, I would say. And also, it attracts many great powers like the United States, Russia, China, and other middle powers. And by, developing or by increasing its presence in Antarctica, Turkey is also, signaling that it will have a greater role in Antarctica, But for sure, as you said, there is a geopolitical aspect for this. But I think more than that, Turkey's interest lies in scientific research right now. And as I said, of course, Antarctica is not a region that is located Turkey's immediate influence area, but it does not mean that it's not an important area for Turkey for scientific research and for developing international cooperation. It's also important for Turkey as well. And looking at the Turkish strategy in Antarctica, I would say, of course, the Turkish presence, Turkish scientific presence, reflects Turkey's long-term scientific commitments, and for sure. But more than that, I would say, Turkey seeks international cooperation, not competition. Not competition, but cooperation. Cooperation is key term here because Turkey is, developing international research partnerships. Turkey is right now just exploring the region. For sure, Turkey is not that new to the region, but compared to other great powers and other middle powers, I would say, Turkey's, research or Turkey's presence in Antarctica is, relatively new, I would say. But, looking at the last decade, I would say Turkey's gradual role, Turkey's role in Antarctica, has gradually increased. And right now, I would say Turkey's presence in Antarctica is not experimental, but it's become an institutional presence, through international partnership and cooperation. And as I just said, Turkey's main priority is not competition in the region. Turkey needs diplomacy, Turkey needs scientific cooperation, and of course, Turkey can contribute to the international cooperation in the Arctic region as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting indeed. This term, science diplomacy, I mean, it can sound a little bit conceptual, a little bit abstract, I guess. But in practical terms, it does seem to be delivering, doesn't it? Just give us a sense of what Turkey gains practically from this engagement, and also what does it want to contribute in return? Yeah, for sure. Scientific diplomacy is a quite good concept, I would say. And of course, we can talk about such a diplomacy type. And as you say, it sounds abstract at first, but it's more than that. We can make it concrete. For sure. Regarding the Turkey's role in science diplomacy, I would say, of course, Turkey can contribute too much, of course, and Turkey can also gain too much during international partnership. First of all, data. Research data, scientific data is very important because Turkish research team will conduct many, experiments, many research there. Of course, Antarctica can provide many data
from biodiversity to tectonic movements of Earth, from energy resources, minerals. Antarctica can provide many, data resources for countries. And by doing scientific research, of course, Turkey can share this data with other countries under the international cooperation, I would say. And also Turkey will gain technical expertise. This is also very important. Technical expertise in the long term will be very important for Turkey's, increased commitment and increased presence in the region, I would say. But like I said, the main priority is research data, organized data, more data. I would say this is all Turkey can contribute to the scientific diplomacy regarding the Antarctica politics.
Yeah, very interesting. And then in terms of the structure that supports that collaboration, how does Turkey's Antarctic work fit within this Antarctic Treaty framework?
Yeah, Antarctic Treaty framework is about developing international partnership. It's about peaceful use of environments, peaceful use of natural resources, and it's also, provides a framework for scientific diplomacy as well. I would say we are talking about Antarctic treaty system, and it's a decades-old system. And I would say, and regarding the Turkish role in the system, I would say Turkey right now holds a non-member consultative member status. Turkey's role is that right now, and also in the long term, I would say by doing this research, by developing international cooperation, I would say Turkey can increase its role in Antarctic treaty system, and of course Turkey can contribute to the development of the system as well, regarding the exploring the region and exploring the other scientific opportunities, I would say. But I would say the tenets, the points that the Atlantic Treaty System provides also fits Turkey's strategic framework in Antarctica, because, like I said, Turkey does not seek competition in Antarctica, yes. And Turkey just seeks international cooperation, scientific research and scientific cooperation. And I would say under these conditions, I would say Turkey follows the system. And of course, Turkey can contribute in the long term in developing of the system as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've stressed that very eloquently, Mr. Ilham, that cooperation, compliance with existing norms and behaviours, yep. Data sharing, all of that very, very important to Turkey. But Turkey is also an ambitious country. I mean, presumably, as well as all that sort of playing nicely with other partners, there's also an ambition about the sort of bigger future that Turkey could play on Antarctica.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, of course, it's kind of an ambitious mission in terms of scientific research. And also, yes, like I said, it signals some kind of political will for long term and increase its presence in Antarctica. That's true. And also, I would say Antarctica, can provide many opportunities for Turkish foreign policy as well. But at the end of the day, I would say, Antarctica is not like Middle East for Turkey, or it's not like Balkans. It's not like Eastern Mediterranean for Turkey. And that's why I'm saying that both in short term and in long term, Turkey needs cooperation, but not competition. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it's not your immediate influence area, I would say. And for sure, it's important. It's not. I'm not underestimating the role of Antarctica for Turkish foreign policy. And but compared to other regions, I would say Turkey's presence, both in short term and in long term, is about or is based on international cooperation. And for sure, maybe other countries like other rival powers in the region may think that Turkey's role or Turkey's increased role in the long term, turns into a kind of a geopolitical ambition, but I do not see in that way, because, like I said, at the end of the day, Antarctica, though it's a very important region, but like I said, it's not a strategic priority for near-term goals for Turkish foreign policy, I would say.
Bekir, fascinating stuff. Great to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, after the break, we'll be taking a look at the top business stories of the day with Katie Wilson. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. Woo! That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etsy Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Etsy Bar, come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here that's been cooking. That is amazing.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm J-Dad. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we're recording the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back to Primetime. Now, Katie Wilson is here with the business. Katie, what's on your agenda tonight?
Well, Guy, we'll be looking at how elections in Japan have impacted markets, a Bitcoin blunder in South Korea, and Elon Musk's plan to build a city on the moon. Let's get started. We begin tonight in Japan, where stocks are smashing through record highs as investors cheer Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's landslide election win. Markets are taking it as a green light for her big spending tax cut plans and a sign that political stability may finally be back in Tokyo.
Japanese stocks smashed through all-time highs on Monday as investors showed strong confidence in Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi after her sweeping election victory. Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party won more than two-thirds of the seat in the lower house in Sunday's vote, giving her a strong mandate to push through big spending and tax relief measures. She has repeatedly said that her plans won't blow out public finances in a nation shouldering the developed world's heaviest debt burden. The Nikkei jumped more than 5% to a record high in morning trade before giving up some of those gains. Analysts say the result eases political uncertainty and fuels optimism that Japan may be entering a period of stable leadership. On debt markets, long-term government bonds recovered after an early dip. Investors had revolted in October when Takaichi won leadership of the LDP. That provoked her to craft her current fiscal policy, which she describes as responsible and proactive. Now the big win may be welcomed by bond investors, as it means the LDP won't have to heed opposition parties, which are targeting even deeper tax relief and broader fiscal stimulus. On foreign exchange markets, the yen steadied following last week's slide. It rose after Japan's top currency diplomat hinted at intervention, saying the government is, quote, closely watching currency movements with a high sense of urgency.
Well, just across the water, the mood was very different. South Korea's crypto market was rocked after exchange Bithumb made a spectacular error, accidentally handing out tens of billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin to customers. A slip-up that briefly sent prices tumbling and put regulators on high alert.
South Korea's Bithumb crypto exchange has apologized for a $44 billion mistake after accidentally giving away 620,000 bitcoins as part of a customer reward campaign. The company said it had restricted trading and withdrawals for the 695 affected customers shortly after the error on Friday, and that it had recovered 99.7% of the bitcoins as of Saturday night. The exchange had planned to distribute small cash rewards of 2,000 Korean won, worth about $1.4 or more to each user as part of a promotional event. But instead, winners received at least 2,000 bitcoins each, media reports said. In a statement, Bithumb said the incident was unrelated to external hacking or security breaches, and there were no problems with system security or customer asset management. But South Korea's financial regulators, including the Financial Services Commission, said the incident has exposed the vulnerabilities and risks of virtual assets. After an emergency meeting, the regulators said in a statement they would review Bithumb and other crypto exchanges' internal control systems, as well as their holdings and operations of virtual assets. And if irregularities are found, an on-site inspection would be launched, the statement said. Bitcoin is the world's largest cryptocurrency. Charts from Bithumb Exchange show Bitcoin prices briefly slumped 17% on Friday evening after the incident, but later recovered.
Over now to Cuba, where the government has rolled out an urgent plan to ration fuel and keep essential services running after Washington tightened the screws on oil supplies, part of rising pressure that's deepening an energy crunch and leaving Havana's streets unusually quiet.
The streets of Havana were unusually quiet Saturday morning, a day after Cuba's government announced fuel rationing measures across the island. The government announced the new measures after the United States stepped up pressure on the island's energy supply. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to slap tariffs on U.S.-bound products from any country exporting fuel to Cuba, and suggested hard times ahead for Cubans already suffering severe shortages of food, fuel, and medicine. At the same time, Washington says it is increasing humanitarian aid. U.S. officials announced an additional $6 million in assistance, bringing total aid since last year's Hurricane Melissa to $9 million, even as efforts continue to block fuel shipments to Cuba. The Trump administration has cut off oil flows that once came through Venezuela, and is warning countries like Mexico they could face tariffs if they keep shipping fuel to the island. Cuban officials have called the policy contradictory, arguing that U.S. pressure is deepening shortages of fuel, food, and medicine. And in the streets of Havana, the effects are hard to miss. An unidentified taxi worker told Reuters the fuel situation has become chaotic, with only a handful of cars operating where dozens once worked. Another taxi driver, Damian Palmeras, said fuel is now rationed by tickets, with drivers limited to just 20 liters at a time. Authorities say what fuel is available will be reserved for essential services like healthcare, agriculture, education, and water systems, while tourism and export industries continue operating to protect foreign currency earnings. For now, officials say rationing will stay in place until supplies stabilize, without saying when relief might come.
To health now, and Novo Nordisk shares soared on Monday after a U-turn from telehealth firm Hims & Hers. The company cancelled its $49 weight loss pill following legal threats from Novo. It's a win for the Danish drug maker in the ongoing fight against copycat drugs, challenging its Wegovy and Ozempic franchises.
Novo Nordisk shares jumped more than 8% on Monday. Investors bought in after telehealth firm Hims & Hers cancelled the launch of a $49 weight loss pill over the weekend. The firm pulled back after legal threats from Novo and the US Food and Drug Administration. Hims introduced their compounded pill last Thursday. It was based on semaglutide, which is a key ingredient in Novo's Wegovy and Ozempic. But the move led to pushback from the Danish drug maker and regulators. Hims said it would stop offering the treatment after holding constructive conversations with stakeholders. It's a rare victory in Novo's fight against compounded versions of its GLP-1 drugs. Compounders copy brand name medicines by combining, mixing or altering drug ingredients. Hims didn't respond to Reuters' questions about whether it would continue selling compounded semaglutide injections on its website. Novo shares had already rebounded over 5% on Friday. That's after the FDA signalled a crackdown on unauthorised compounded GLP-1 medications. The drugs have challenged the drug maker's pricing power in the weight loss and diabetes markets. However, Novo still faces heavy competition in the rapidly shifting GLP-1 market. Eli Lilly and other compounding pharmacies also offer injectable versions of semaglutide.
Now, a Munich-based robotics firm is gearing up for a big leap across the Atlantic. The startup, which specialises in AI-driven physical AI for industrial automation, just raised $100 million from investors. The funding will help the company expand in the US and take its smart robotic arms to the next level.
These robotic arms are bringing artificial intelligence to the physical world. Its maker, Munich-based Robco, is working to advance so-called physical AI technology. But what is physical AI, and why is it useful?
Yeah, physical AI to us at Robco is the application of AI in the physical world. That means in the manufacturing environment, in the industry, in production environments.
Roman Herzler is the co-founder and CEO of Robco, which was founded in 2020. The German company specializes in modular systems, such as pallet stacking and component engraving. Herzler says his team does all of the setup and pre-trains the robotic arms before customers use it.
With the idea of automating, we go on site, we scan the environment, and we would create a digital concept of that specific industrial environment. So you would see the machines on that shop floor, the environment, the parts that are to be handled, and then we create a digital twin of the robot and that environment, and we would demonstrate the types of tasks we do, the output, the cycle time, the interfaces to existing machinery and safety equipment, for example. And on that basis, we then deploy the actual physical robot in the field.
Robco, whose customers include BMW, is bolstering its position in a rapidly expanding market with a fresh capital injection. Thanks to investors including Volkswagen's venture capital arm and Exor, Robco announced on Thursday that it's raised $100 million, which will be used to expand its U.S. footprint. Robco says the funding will help accelerate its efforts to scale globally and refine its robotics technology.
And finally, forget Mars. Elon Musk is turning his attention to the moon. SpaceX plans to build a self-growing city there, aiming to make it a reality in under 10 years. Mars may still be on the roadmap, but the moon just became the new priority for the next giant leap for mankind.
Elon Musk said on Sunday that SpaceX has shifted its focus to building a self-growing city on the moon, which he says could be achieved in less than 10 years. He wrote on his X social media platform that SpaceX still intends to start on Musk's long-held ambition of a city on Mars within 5 to 7 years, but that the, quote, overriding priority is securing the future of civilization and the moon is faster. Musk's comments echo a Wall Street Journal report on Friday. It stated SpaceX has told investors it would prioritize going to the moon and attempt a trip to Mars at a later time. The US faces intense competition from China in the race to return humans to the moon this decade. Humans have not visited the lunar surface since the Apollo 17 mission in 1972. Less than a week ago, Musk announced SpaceX brought the artificial intelligence company he also leads, xAI. The deal values the rocket and satellite company at $1 trillion and the AI firm at $250 billion. Proponents of the move view it as a way for SpaceX to bolster its plans for space-based data centres.
Well, that's your business news roundup for the day. Back to you, Guy.
Absolutely amazing, Katie. A self-growing city on the moon. Incredible stuff. Thank you very much. Okay, after the break, we'll take a closer look at how new Epstein documents are fueling political fallouts in the UK, with senior resignations adding pressure on Keir Starmer's leadership. Stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. Woo! That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etsy Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here, that's been cooking. That is amazing.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the centre, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv, Washington, London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, Port Emu.
Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. Now, newly released US Justice Department documents are shedding fresh light on the global reach of Jeffrey Epstein's network, including direct contacts with senior Russian figures and attempts to reach the highest levels of power in Moscow. Now, the revelations are also reverberating politically in the United Kingdom, where they've contributed to a series of senior resignations inside Prime Minister Keir Starmer's team, intensifying scrutiny on his judgment and leadership.
Recently published Epstein files expand the known scope of the convicted sex offenders international network, revealing direct correspondence with several high-profile Russian figures. The documents also show that Epstein spent years trying to arrange a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to the records, Epstein regularly met with Russia's former ambassador to the United Nations, Vitaly Churkin, in New York. The files also indicate that he communicated with Thorbjørn Jagland, the former Norwegian Prime Minister, who was serving as Secretary General of the Council of Europe in 2018. In an email written in June that year, Epstein suggested that Jagland help facilitate introductions to Russian officials. Jagland replied that he would raise the matter with an assistant to Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The release of the documents has triggered an official investigation and a strong response from Moscow. While not directly addressing the new revelations, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said the Epstein case exposed what she described as widespread corruption among Western elites and alleged conspiracies among powerful figures across governments and international institutions. The Epstein files are also having political repercussions in the United Kingdom. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, resigned on Sunday amid pressure over Starmer's decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States. McSweeney said he had been closely involved in the appointment. Starmer is now facing his most serious political crisis since taking office, after documents detailed Mandelson's past connections to Epstein.
Okay, before we connect to our guest, let's just get the latest from our correspondent, Ollie Barrett in the UK.
Well, Guy, this is a very difficult moment indeed for Keir Starmer. He's lost his Chief of Staff and his Director of Communications within 24 hours. It's Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, that is the most important, I think, of those departures. That is a man who has been by Keir Starmer's side for years now, before he got into government, often described as the brains behind the Keir Starmer project. Now, that is sometimes done in a complimentary way and sometimes not, by some Labour MPs who were delighted to see the back of Morgan McSweeney and had been calling for his head for some time. Of course, those departures have been hastened by the revelations around Peter Mandelson, his links to Jeffrey Epstein, and the way in which he was appointed by Keir Starmer as UK ambassador, I should say, to Washington, a job he then had to be sacked from when further revelations came out about his links to Jeffrey Epstein after he had been convicted. All of this leads to speculation about Keir Starmer's own position, and without Morgan McSweeney, he's, if you like, removed a lightning rod for some of the criticism that would come his way. So much of that criticism is now coming directly to the Prime Minister, and there are some Labour MPs who believe that a change of leader and a change of Prime Minister would be in the best interests of the party. Now, I have been in a lobby briefing of journalists for A News today, and the Prime Minister's spokesman in that lobby briefing was asked a very simple question. Is the Prime Minister going to resign today? Was the question. The answer from the Prime Minister's spokesman, no. And then he went on to claim that the Prime Minister is in what he called upbeat, confident, positive, determined mood. And we also had the Prime Minister addressing Downing Street staff earlier in the day. He said, we go forward from here. He said, we go with confidence as we continue changing the country. And that is what he's going to try and do over the days to come, is show that he and his government ministers are out there getting on with the job of governing. But there are quite a lot of Labour MPs and there are a lot of external observers who just find it very hard now to see how exactly Keir Starmer stays in his job over the medium to long term. So even if he does get through the next few days as leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, how does he get beyond, for example, a by-election at the end of this month, which Labour could lose in the north of England? How would he get beyond a disastrous set of local and regional election results in May if he is in his post at that point? And going back, Guy, to the Mandelson saga, one of the other things that the government has committed to is publishing thousands of documents and communications between government officials, members of staff, and Peter Mandelson himself. And there is a real trepidation in Downing Street that those documents, those communications could reveal some very embarrassing episodes potentially for people in and around the government. The other fear here in London is that some of that documentation may reveal some critical language and words and opinions of the US President Donald Trump, and that could strain ties between London and Washington. So, Guy, for now, Keir Starmer trying to show that he's getting on with the job, trying to rally his troops, but exactly how long that works for him very much remains to be seen.
OK, joining us now is Andy Preston, a UK political commentator. He's going to help us unpack the fallout in Westminster and what this means for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's leadership. Andy, always great to hear from you, to see you there. This is difficult, isn't it? Mr McSweeney has gone. Mr Sarwar, Labour's leader in Scotland, he's now openly calling for Starmer to resign. And perhaps most damaging of all, Andy, is the silence. You know, very few big political beasts seem to be leaping to Keir Starmer's defence. To use a very British expression, he's toast, isn't he?
I think he is toast, Guy. Yeah, I think you're right. Interesting, in the last 30 to 40 minutes, a number of cabinet members have come out and made statements in support of Keir Starmer. However, I think that's a symptom of the fact that clearly Number 10 Downing Street has been rallying around, calling around every cabinet member, urging them to show support. And it's very hard for them not to at this point, but one of them will break, or a junior minister will break. And when that happens, that's the beginning of the dam. I actually thought that Anas Sarwar's statement would be the beginning of the dam breaking, but it's definitely coming. It's almost impossible to see how Starmer survives this guy.
And then, you know, I think back, Andy, I'm sure you remember too, I think if my memory serves me correctly, that manifesto document that was held aloft by Keir Starmer just had one word on it, change, I think it was. And there was a real sense that with this government, you know, they won't get everything perfect, but what you are going to get is a change in terms of accountability, a change in terms of the way relationships are managed. There'll be a real sense of behaving in a way that the public will respect. I mean, that's just completely gone out of the window, hasn't it?
Yeah, the manifesto that Keir Starmer and the ruling Labour Party published to try and win the electorate's confidence here was all about change. They said very little. They gave very little detail of actual policies and things that they would change. But they were elected with about 33% of the vote, pledging change, pledging to clean up politics. But what's happened, in truth, is that the scandals have continued but got worse. The lack of direction and clarity has continued and got worse, and people feel more pessimistic now than they did before. And politics is largely about optimism. If people feel that the future will be better than the past, as a politician, you're in great shape. They're going to vote for you. When people feel negative, they're going to vote for somebody else. So you are dead right that change was promised. No change has come. In fact, the problems that were there with the previous government have continued and got worse. And that's why, to use your words and your phrase, Keir Starmer is toast.
And it does beg the question, though, doesn't it, in all of this? I mean, we understand political alliances. We understand how you have to play the game as a leader to keep certain factions in your party happy. You often will hire people that you perhaps don't like or even respect very much if that person will get you a result with a particular tranche of the electorate. We all understand these different sort of machinations. But the vetting process, I mean, how Keir Starmer was a pretty successful lawyer. And in fact, one of the things that a previous boss of his said about Keir Starmer was that he actually excels at research, at scrutinising data and information. How could he possibly have got this so wrong?
I think that Keir Starmer is really bad at making decisions. I have never worked with him, but I can imagine that he's incredibly good at research, going through the machinations, the cogitations about the pros and cons of a project. But at the end of the day, he seems to rely on those around him to offer advice, to help him make decisions. And obviously some of that is good advice and some is bad. He seems to always come down on the side of the bad advice. Peter Mandelson is what's precipitated the current crisis, which is itself is an extension of the Epstein issue, which is international. And it seems that he was strongly advised by a number of cabinet ministers not to touch Peter Mandelson because of his track record of if I say dodgy deals, I don't necessarily mean criminally illegal, but I mean highly questionable and ethically unsuitable for government. He's got a history of that. Yet there seemed to be a small group of people that were lobbying hard for the hiring of Peter Mandelson for that top job in the USA, UK ambassador to the USA. And that's been the latest or final straw that's brought about this undoing, which is inevitably coming. So while I think you're right, Guy, I think that he is a detail man, he's a forensic man, he will study. He's bad at making decisions and he listens to too many people and seems to put his faith in the wrong people.
And we're hearing now, Andy, lots of cries from people saying, this is back to old Westminster habits. We need a new, fresh approach to governing. But is it really possible in the modern world, with so much at stake economically, politically, to avoid doing business, having some kind of relations with people that the electorate may not wish us to have, frankly?
Oh, really good question. I mean, for example, at an international level, there's lots of tension here in the UK and debate about how close we should be to China. And there's a British and Hong Kong citizen called Jimmy Lau, who's been imprisoned today in China or sentenced to effectively a life sentence. He's a 78-year-old pro-democracy businessman. And a lot of people here are very cross about that and say we should be tougher with China. But you are right, is that we have to tread very carefully with people with whom we need to do business with. There are people with whom you need to get along. However, the Epstein scandal and its version over here, which is the Lord Mandelson scandal, is less about major business than investment, and it's more just about personal ambition, personal greed, and betraying government secrets in return for favours. It's much less about large-scale investment and more about personal enrichment.
And finally, Andy, you've got a very strong track record of making predictions on this show. I know you have on other TV channels as well. Who do you think? I mean, is Angela Rayner a dead cert, or do you think another potential leader might surprise us at the last minute?
Well, you know what? There are always surprises, Guy. Always surprises, and often it's the candidate who surprises the watchers who ends up winning. Right now, if you follow the betting markets, and betting markets don't predict the future, but they show what people are thinking, Angela Rayner is the favourite, but she's still only got about a 30% chance. Wes Streeting, who was a favourite, he's a centrist, a sort of Blairite. He was favourite before her, but he's pushed out now to about 6 or 7 to 1 because he was very close with Lord Mandelson, and Wes Streeting's husband was actually an employee, a close business political associate of Lord Mandelson. So he's pushed out. If someone was looking for an outside tip, gosh, I would probably look at somebody like off the radar, someone like a Bridget Phillipson, who's left wing, because of course this position, the new leader of the Labour Party, will be chosen largely by the membership, not by the MPs. And the membership loves the left wingers. That's how Jeremy Corbyn got in. So it's likely to be a left winger, and it's likely to be someone who's seen as not tainted with the toxicity of the past. So somebody like Bridget Phillipson, who's a rank outsider, I think about 75 to 1 at the bookies. I would be keeping an eye on her.
Andy, we will do just that. You heard it here first. Another prediction from you there. Thank you very much, as always, for your analysis. Okay, after the break, we'll be back with more news and analysis. Do keep it tuned to A News.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the centre, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. Woo! That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etsy Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here that's been cooking. That is amazing.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm J-Dad. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro,
Beijing,
Bangkok,
Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan,
Tehran,
Islamabad,
Istanbul,
Kabul, Port
Welcome back. The Greek Prime Minister will visit Turkey on Wednesday. Now, he will take part in the 6th meeting of the High-Level Cooperation Council between the two countries. Turkish officials say discussions will focus on expanding cooperation and reviewing bilateral relations. Well, joining me now to really unpack what this meeting is about is A News' Andy Mioch. Andy, great to have you in the studio with us. Long history, isn't there, between these two countries? But how much weight should we really attach to this council meeting?
Well, Guy, it's really difficult to say at this point. You've read it yourself. It's bilateral relations, diplomacy, etc. All those very generic terms. You've mentioned the long history, and it is true. Ankara and Athens have been long-standing rivals, but they are NATO allies. In the recent years, their relations have eased and improved, but there are, of course, unresolved issues. Among the key issues is the Aegean Sea, or specifically their maritime border. That area is believed to hold significant energy potential, besides its importance for overflights and airspace. All that being said, this council that's set to meet in Ankara this week, chaired by Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, is expected to address a wide range of issues, including how to hit that bilateral trade volume target of $10 billion and up it from last year's $6.7 billion. This is the 6th time the council is meeting since it was established in 2010. Now, the last meeting was held in December of 2023 in Athens after a 7-year hiatus. That 5th meeting saw both sides agree on that trade target of $10 billion. More than a dozen documents were signed, and the two countries announced what's called the Athens Declaration on Friendly Relations. The following year, Mitsotakis visited Turkey. There have also been meetings between diplomacy chiefs, and according to the available information, the ministries of foreign affairs are in constant contact.
Now, as you say, the Aegean has long been a kind of a flashpoint. In summary, what is it? What is the core issue, the key stumbling block that both sides just can't get past?
Well, Guy, to put it simply, it's a matter of who gets to control what. And it is particularly important for navigational freedom, airspace, overflight freedoms, but resource exploitation as well. As things stand currently, both countries claim 6 nautical miles of territorial sea, and here is where an international convention comes into play, or rather it doesn't. The UN Convention on the Law of the Sea was signed by Greece but not by Turkey. Now, according to that convention, any country can, in principle, define its territorial waters to extend up to 12 nautical miles. But there's an important exception if there is no border agreement, if there is an overlap or unclear boundaries. The parties involved must reach a bilateral agreement, which Greece and Turkey have never done. Greece has argued that the convention gives them a right to extend its territorial waters, but Turkey responded that such an extension would be a casus belli, or a cause for war, because it will convert most of the Aegean Sea into Greek territorial waters, effectively blocking navigation of ships and planes of Turkey and other nations. The Turkish parliament even officially passed a resolution containing that declaration on a casus belli in 1995. Now, more recently, in October of 2025, Greece said that it will veto Turkey's participation in the EU's Security Action for Europe program, or SAFE, unless Ankara withdraws its casus belli declaration. That program, worth up to 150 billion euros, is part of a broader attempt of the Europeans to procure defense equipment, boost defense industry on the continent, and so on. Of course, Turkey is not a member of the European Union, but it had been granted candidate status back in 1999. Germany had, for example, been one of the most vocal supporters for Ankara to join the SAFE program, as it's one of EU's most militarily capable NATO allies.
Now, Cyprus isn't officially on the agenda, but it's an issue that's never really too far away. How much is the issue of Cyprus looming in the background, do you think?
Well, it's often the case that it is. Just today, Cypriot media report that Greek Cypriot leader spoke to Mitsotakis ahead of his Ankara trip to coordinate their position on the Cyprus issue. The readout of the phone call said that the two leaders spoke on, and I quote here, on the latest developments in the Cyprus issue, as well as the efforts being made to restart negotiations within the agreed UN framework. Now, the local media there are reporting that the call focused on efforts to resume negotiations on resolving the Cyprus issue from the point where they collapsed at the Swiss town of Crans-Montana in 2017. The latest update, official one, that we got on the issue was from the UN envoy for Cyprus back in December, when former Colombian Foreign Minister Maria Angela Holguin said that she's cautiously optimistic, but thinks that it is too early to convene a multi-nation summit and announce a breakthrough. After meeting with Greek and Turkish Cypriot leaders, the envoy said that more needs to be done to establish a climate of trust, which would allow the UN General Secretary to convene a 5+1 informal meeting. Now, that 5+1 formal meeting would see the two Cypriot communities, the UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres, Britain, Turkey, and Greece to hold talks on how to move forward and break the stalemate. Just for a bit of background, those three countries, those three NATO allies, are guarantor powers of Cyprus under a treaty that granted the island independence from Britain in 1960. It did not work out well. The shared administration of the island fell through in 1963. Turkey invaded the north of the island in 1974 after a brief coup engineered by the military then ruling Greece. The island has been split on ethnic lines ever since, with Turkish Cypriots living in the north, while Greek Cypriots live in the south and run an internationally recognized administration representing the whole island in the European Union. And by the way, Cyprus is currently presiding over the European Union for a 6-month term starting in January.
Yes, indeed. I mean, some might say, Andy, that we've seen all this before. You know, periods of calm followed by another flare-up, warm words from politicians. What is it that normally tips things over the balance?
Well, there's a number of reasons, be it domestic politics, be it military posturing. We have seen a lot of different reasons. Their relations are characterized by these intermittent flare-ups. The relations, as we mentioned in the beginning, eased in 2023 when both countries reinstated direct communication channels. But before that, for example, we've seen instances of Greek and Turkish fighter jets engaging in mock dogfighting over the disputed areas of the Aegean Sea. In one of the more recent episodes in December, Greece and Cyprus signed a series of defense deals with Israel, and a number of analysts and pundits saw those as an attempt to create a new security architecture in Eastern Mediterranean aimed at containing Turkish influence. A bit before those trilateral cooperation agreements, the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan accused Israel of seeking to encircle Turkey. Now, this of course adds to a list of possible problems between Ankara and Athens, besides Cyprus and the Aegean Sea.
Finally then, Andy, what do you think is the mindset here? Is this really about fundamentally fixing the relationship, or is it more just about managing the tensions in a way that causes the minimum possible of flare-ups?
Well, we've heard a few days ago on Thursday from Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. He spoke to the foreign policy and he said he does not see a serious risk of escalation with Turkey. He said that the only difference separating the two NATO allies is the delimitation of maritime regions. Athens said ahead of the meeting that it will never bring sovereignty issues or red lines to the table. Last month, we've heard from Ankara saying that improvement of Turkish-Greek relations is always possible, adding that both sides need, quote, only one step. Those were the words of Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. He also spoke on what Ankara perceives as priorities, saying that they should primarily resolve the maritime border dispute and implement confidence-building measures. Now, when it comes to this week's visit and the meetings, we'll just have to wait and see if any practical effects will come out of it.
Very interesting indeed. Andy, as always, we thank you very much for your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a closer look at why relations between Turkey and Greece have swung between dialogue and tension for decades, and plenty more news and analysis to come. Do stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. Woo! That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etsy Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Etsy Bar, come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here that's been cooking. That is amazing.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note. To Fierce. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we're reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro,
Beijing,
Bangkok,
Tbilisi,
Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan,
Tehran,
Islamabad,
Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back. US Vice President J.D. Vance is set to begin a 3-day visit to Azerbaijan and also Armenia. Now, Vance arrived in Yerevan on Monday before he is set to proceed on to Baku on Tuesday. The trip is aimed at promoting the US administration's peace efforts as well as the Trump route for international peace and prosperity project. And Mr. Vance will be joined by US Under-Secretary of State for Economic Growth, Jacob Hellberg. Now, joining us in the studio is Murad Muradov, co-founder and deputy director of the Chubakov Center for the Chubakov Center. Made a real mouthful. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. It's great to see you, and thank you very much for helping me out the name of your prestigious centre. What should we? I mean, this is incredible. This visit, isn't it? Incredible for the region. There has been a certain sequencing that's taken place. Yerevan, now Baku. What should we read into that, and what should we read into the signal that this sends to the region in terms of US priorities?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting to the program. Yeah, of course. I think starting from August, from the 8th of August last year, when President Aliyev, Prime Minister Pashinyan sat together with Donald Trump in the White House, signing the historic Washington Agreement Declaration, which initials the peace treaty between the countries who have been at war for decades. Of course, it set a tone to the, let's say, new page of US presence in the South Caucasus. And definitely, since the peace process has been keeping on so fast and with such a strong momentum, I think now Washington views Azerbaijan and Armenia as, say, certain pillars through which they would like to, say, shape the geopolitics of the region as say, extended Eurasia, which is like place in a section of Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. Like so, to have have it more stable, and also to ensure its own interests. Well, of course, I mean the fact that President Trump played this kind of role in the achieving of the peace agreement, it plays into his image as, let's say, the president who stops wars, who, let's say, achieves peace to strength, as he likes to reiterate, like usually. So yeah, of course, like this visit is kind of crowns this, say, last half a year period when we have seen a lot of, let's say, steps being taken, such as the initial establishment of economic cooperation, the transit of an export from Azerbaijan to Armenia, then a lot of civic exchange, let's say, changing rhetoric on the highest level, also the level of parliaments, media, and of course the American willingness to say provide some carrots to both leaders in forms of greater exposure to global markets, to new investment opportunities. Yeah, of course, it was a huge stimulus, for this process to really get the pace.
And we're poised now, aren't we? There's already been some success in terms of this bilateral relationship. It looks like we're poised for more to come. As we sort of stand on the precipice of this, how does Baku view the role of Washington? Is it as peace facilitator? Is it as a sort of a catalyst for dramatic economic growth and development? What do officials in Baku see the role of Washington as being going forward?
Well, back in 2024, I think Baku was behind, the initiative to start, let's say, the fully bilateral negotiation process for the first time, since the start of the conflict. And Azerbaijan made it clear that it doesn't want, the process to be decided by mediators. And at that point, the major mediators were the EU and Russia, of course. The US had been out for a while of the process. Then I think this new administration, so it managed to find itself in a more pragmatic role. As you've said, a catalyst, it's a good word actually, since the sheer weight of American presence and the opportunities it provides, also certain kind of geopolitical, economic guarantees. And first of all, I think it helped Armenia on one side to offset the negative publicity which comes, of course, from, since after the 2020-2023, Armenian society was largely skeptical and conceiving the peace as some kind of treason of Armenian interests. On the other hand, for Azerbaijan, of course, the specter of Armenian revanchism and also the influence of other powers, first of all, of course, Iran, Russia, has also been the factor which somehow, kept Baku's peace ambitions on a certain leash. So these newly found American residents, to enter the process was indeed a good catalyst and a good enabler also of the new regional configuration, which makes peace viable. Because of course, just having, let's say, a peace agreement in the absence of any security, economic, let's say, social infrastructure for this would not have been, I think, in the major interests of the countries. And also, on the other hand, the logic of security dilemma, which has prevailed in the South Caucasus since basically the three countries got independence. It also, of course, very significantly weighed against the peace. So this kind of, just huge presence of Washington, is I think the factor which changed the calculation in both capitals.
And in terms of those calculations, the Trip corridor, or the Zanzibar corridor, as people might call it, that's come into more and more sharp focus recently, hasn't it? Talk to us about that, because it's interesting. Baku seems to be very relaxed about this, even the branding of the corridor itself. Is it because Baku sees this as something that's both good for regional connectivity and also good for Azerbaijan?
Yes, indeed. For Azerbaijan, there's always been the two elements to the Zanzibar corridor, or Trip, or however you call it. Of course, economic connectivity and, say, bigger and more convenient access to, let's say, to the international markets is just one of them, because Azerbaijan hasn't, let's say, been suffering from, let's say, from isolation for since the 90s. We have established connections via Georgia and Turkey to Europe, and also, even despite all, let's say, political differences, like Baku has always had very pragmatic cooperation with Russia and Iran when it comes to logistics, and we have always been open to all kinds of mutually beneficial cooperations. Of course, I mean, needless to say about Central Asia, which is eager to develop the infrastructural connectivity with Azerbaijan. So, but on the other hand, TRIP also bears very crucial security and symbolic significance as a road which can connect back Azerbaijan with its enclave of Nakhchivan, which has been physically isolated from the mainland since independence because of the war, and Baku came to depend on Iran, for this lifeline, Nakhchivan. And of course, I mean, given all the, let's say, uneven and unstable relations with Iran, and also, the perennial risks of larger conflicts that loom over Iran, over Tehran. So for Baku, this kind of dependence has been a problem. And also, I mean, given, all this bitter legacy of the conflict, the fact that Azerbaijan restored connection to Nakhchivan, I mean, unimpeded, let's say, connection. Yeah, it should be a very big sign and gesture to to all Azerbaijanis since the conflict is over. And I think that the government has been very principled on this issue because, I mean, it was viewed, I mean, by basically almost everyone, I think, in the country, all the groups, as, the price we deserve and which is in a way owed to us.
And as you say, the symbolism is very strong, the commitment is very clear. In terms of concrete outcomes, clear actions emerging from this meeting, are we expecting anything tangible at this early stage, or are we looking for a sort of longer term process to before we start to see those real outcomes emerge?
Well, this far, since August last year, there have been two really big issues, say, on the agenda between Baku and Washington. The first is the final elimination of the infamous 906 amendment, which was basically adopted back in 1992 in the US Congress, and which banned, all kinds of military, let's say, assistance from US to Azerbaijan. And this act played a very negative role, actually. I mean, and despite, all the, let's say, security and geopolitical alignments between the capitals, which existed, especially, let's say, during the 90s and 2000s, the presence of this amendment was a constant irritating factor. And of course, I mean, the lobby in the US always used it, to remind, let's say, the American public, that Azerbaijan is allegedly an aggressive country, and the US shouldn't support it, and so on and so forth. And also, during the Biden administration, for the first time in 20 years, the Congress didn't fail to waiver this amendment, which they had been doing for every year since 2001. And in Baku, it was perceived as a sign of certain disrespect. I mean, President Aliyev on many occasions said that, as soon as the US presence in Afghanistan came to an end, so it means that you don't need us anymore, and you take this biased position. So of course it will be very important symbolically, but practically also, if let's say the US cancels all these hurdles, for developing a proper cooperation. On the other hand, it is, preparing the charter of strategic partnership between the countries. I mean, as you may know, in 2024, December, US and Armenia also already signed the strategic partnership. Yeah, even before the Trump administration came to power, the White House. So and there have been talks that this document is in its preparation phase. So I think we can hear some important statements on this. But and of course, I mean, we already have some first, outcomes of the Yerevan visit of J.D. Vance, and they've announced a very significant programs on nuclear cooperation between US and Armenia, and also and multi-billion funds being allocated to develop all the infrastructure about the trip and to boost its trade impact. So I think that we will also hear some very significant steps aimed at improving economic cooperation, and the fact that today a group of CEOs of some of the world's biggest companies were in Baku. It also indicates to the very ambitious plans that are on the agenda.
And we know that the two presidents have very close working relationship. There's admiration between the two men. Do you expect this to lead to Azerbaijan playing a different role in the world? Do you think Washington sees Baku as very much a gateway, not just to the South Caucasus, but also to Central Asia?
Well, it definitely does. Well, the fact that President Aliyev, actually alongside with some Central Asian leaders and Prime Minister Pashinyan of Armenia, they've been invited to the inaugural session of the so-called Board of Peace, this organization of which President Trump intends as some kind of challenger to the UN, or maybe it's as not a substitute, but some kind of a new additional player, which he sees as a as a union of like-minded countries who share some general provisions of his agenda. The facts, of course, speaks volumes about the relations between presidents Trump and Aliyev. And on the other hand, I must say that I think Baku now is in a position to offer very significant things to Washington. And there was information that, let's say, US views the corridor as a very important route for bringing resources from Central Asia, first of all, gold, precious metals, rare earths, uranium, to the Western markets, I mean to the American markets, of course, first of all. And it indicates to the fact that there is real interest on the ground, and that US in this configuration would be having a significant stake in the preservation of stability and of peace in this part of the world. Because since if you are going to invest, if you are going to attach your strategic supply interests to a certain part of the world, of course, you also are willing to invest in helping it to become prosperous and developed.
Mr. Muradov, co-founder and deputy director of the Chubashov organisation, distinguished organisation. We thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, after the break, we check in with our correspondents all around the world for the very latest developments in their regions. Do stay with us.
Welcome to Shusha. That spring water comes from the Karabakh Mountains. I'd love to taste it, actually. That is just amazing. All right, we're in the kitchen here with Etsy Bar. He's the head chef. What are we making today?
Today we will be preparing Shusha rice.
Finally doing something. Etsy Bar, come on. 5 more minutes and we'll be eating. Hopefully we can get down there. 4 hours in here, that's been cooking. That is amazing.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay.
Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are recording
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kiev, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan,
Tehran, Islamabad,
Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back to Primetime now. Let's catch up with our correspondents around the world. Georgia's Prime Minister says most of the country's main east-west highway should be completed by the end of the decade, a project aimed at strengthening transport links and positioning Georgia as a key trade route between Asia and Europe. A News's correspondent Nini Nikolashvili reports now from Tbilisi.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kabakhidze says the government is taking what he described as consistent steps to fully utilize the country's strategic location, with a particular focus on developing transport and transit infrastructure. Speaking to the journalists, Kabakhidze said strengthening connectivity is one of the government's key priorities, as Georgia positions itself as a critical link in regional and international trade routes. According to the Prime Minister, large-scale investments are currently underway in infrastructure projects tied to the East-West Highway, which forms Georgia's section of the so-called Middle Corridor, a multimodal trade route connecting Asia with Europe via the South Caucasus and the Black Sea. Kabakhidze said that under current plans, nearly all sections of the East-West Highway will be completed by the end of 2030. The highway will run continuously from Georgia's border with Turkey through to the borders with Azerbaijan and Armenia, significantly improving cross-border transport capacity. The East-West Highway, also known as the European Transit Route E60, stretches approximately 392 kilometers across Georgia. It begins at the Red Bridge on the Azerbaijani border and ends on the Black Sea coast near the port city of Poti, one of Georgia's main maritime gateways. Once fully completed, travel time across the country from Sarpi on the Turkish border to the Red Bridge is expected to be reduced from around 8 hours to approximately 4 to 4.5 hours. Officials say that this reduction will improve the efficiency of cargo movement and lower transportation costs for regional and international trade. The Middle Corridor has gained increased attention in recent years as an alternative trade route between Asia and Europe, particularly amid disruptions to traditional northern routes. Georgia's location places it at the center of this corridor, linking Central Asia and the South Caucasus to the Black Sea ports and onwards to the European markets. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Heading south now, and Saudi Arabia has opened the Third World Defence Show near Riyadh, bringing together major global defence companies as the kingdom looks to boost local production and strengthen strategic independence. A News's Nurai Mustafa reports now from Riyadh.
The Third World Defense Show opened on 8 February by Prince Khalid bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's Minister of Defense, in Mulham, north of Riyadh. The 5-day event features international and regional defense companies and aims to strengthen localization and strategic independence in the kingdom's defense industry. World Defense Show CEO Andrew Piercy highlighted that the exhibition includes a fully equipped airport, a 2,700-meter runway, taxiway and large display areas for the latest aircraft, showcasing its world-class capabilities. On the first day, GAMI signed agreement with Sami, General Electric and Airbus Defence and Space to boost localization and technology transfer. In aviation, GE Aerospace and Middle East Propulsion Company announced 3 deals to improve the Royal Saudi Air Force's F-110-129 engines. Aerobatic and formation highlights by the Air Force were also presented. The show demonstrates Saudi Arabia's commitment to innovation, localization, and integrated defense ecosystem, featuring live demonstrations, static display, and new zones to foster collaboration between government bodies and defense companies. Nuray Mustafa and Zohrab Shirinov for A News, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
And Pakistan has reportedly decided to return nearly 20,000 Afghan refugees awaiting resettlement in the United States, with media reports saying formal instructions are being prepared for provisional authorities. A News' correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
According to Pakistani local media, Islamabad plans to return around 20,000 Afghan nationals who are currently awaiting relocation to the United States. Sources say the Federal Interior Ministry has decided to send letters to all provincial chief secretaries, police chiefs and authorities in Islamabad, instructing them to initiate the return of Afghan citizens. Thousands of Afghans in Pakistan have been waiting for years to be resettled in the United States after being evacuated from Afghanistan in 2021. Many of them had worked with US forces or institutions and feared retaliation after the Taliban returned to power. However, reports suggest that Washington is being slow or unwilling to accept many of those still waiting, leaving them in prolonged uncertainty. Pakistani authorities are now expected to begin the process of sending these Afghans back to Afghanistan. The development comes as arrests of Afghan nationals continue across Pakistan. A joint report by the International Organization for Migration and the UN Refugee Agency say more than 7,000 Afghans were detained in the past month alone, most of them lacking valid residency documents. In January alone, Pakistani authorities detained around 6,200 undocumented migrants and 740 registered refugees. The latest move is likely to deepen concerns among Afghans in Pakistan who are still waiting for resettlement abroad, as uncertainty over their future continues to grow. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Well, that brings us to the end of Prime Time for tonight. We'll be back again soon with plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.